What lies beneath the Pacific Ocean that modern science refuses to acknowledge? What if everything we've been taught about human origins, about Sumer, about the Anunnaki, is nothing more than the final chapter of a much older, much darker story? You know about the Sumerian Tablets, the ones that speak of gods descending from the heavens, of bloodlines mixed between mortals and immortals, of forbidden knowledge carved into clay. Those tablets sit in museums today, protected behind glass, studied by academics who insist they are myth, metaphor, allegory. But what if I told you there are tablets that make Sumer look like yesterday's news? Tablets so ancient, so forbidden, that only 3 priests in all of India could read them when they were discovered. Tablets that don't just describe the beginning of civilization, they describe what came before Sumer, before Egypt, before Babylon, before the flood that reset everything. The story of Mu, the mother civilization, the birthplace of the gods themselves. And by the end of this, you'll understand why mainstream archaeology refuses to talk about it. The year was 1868. A British colonel named James Churchward was stationed in India during the final years of the British Raj. He was a military man, a cartographer, someone trained to observe, to document, to measure the world with precision. But what he discovered in a temple vault would consume the rest of his life. According to Churchward, he befriended a high-ranking temple priest, a man who had spent decades guarding something that wasn't supposed to be seen by outsiders. One day, after months of trust building, the priest brought Churchward into a sealed chamber, and there, stacked in the shadows, were clay tablets covered in a script so ancient that the priest himself admitted only 2 other people on Earth could still read it. The language was called Naga Maya, the script of the Serpent. Now, before you dismiss this as colonial fantasy, understand something. Churchward wasn't some treasure hunter. He was a fellow of the Royal Geographic Society, a respected engineer, and later an author who published hundreds of diagrams, linguistic comparisons, and cross-cultural analyses. He didn't just claim to have seen these tablets. He spent 50 years of his life trying to translate them, cross-reference them, and prove they were real. And what he found was staggering. The tablets didn't describe the history of India. They described the history of a place that no longer exists, a continent called Mu, the homeland of the first civilization, the place where humanity as we know it was created. But here's the twist. Churchward didn't just say Mu was old, he said it existed for over 50,000 years. He said it had 64 million inhabitants. He said it had 7 great cities, a centralized government, colonies on every continent, and technology that allowed its people to cross oceans and build monuments that still stand today. And then, 12,000 years ago, in a single catastrophic night, it sank beneath the Pacific Ocean. Now, let's pause, because if you've been following this channel, you know we talk about the Sumerian King List all the time. That ancient record that claims 8 kings ruled for a combined 241,000 years before the flood. Mainstream historians say that's impossible. They say it's symbolic, inflated, mythological. It's not, and the proof has been sitting in plain sight for a century. The reason we can't find archaeological proof of those kings in Mesopotamia is simple. They weren't ruling in Mesopotamia, they were ruling here, in Mu, the empire that came first. Think about it. The Sumerian texts themselves say their gods came across the sea, from a place called Dilmun, from the Abzu, the watery abyss, from somewhere that predates their own recorded history. The Sumerians didn't claim to be the first, they claimed to be the survivors. And if Mu lasted 50,000 years before it sank, then suddenly that 241,000-year timeline doesn't sound so crazy anymore. It sounds like a fragment, a memory, a piece of the puzzle we've been missing. So what were these tablets exactly? According to Churchward, the Naacal Tablets described the creation of the earth, the arrival of the first humans, and the rise of the Naacal Brotherhood, a priestly class of enlightened beings who were tasked with spreading knowledge across the world. But here's where it gets interesting. The word Naacal doesn't just mean priest. In the ancient Naga Maya language, it translates to the exalted serpents, the Serpent Brotherhood, the ones who brought wisdom from the stars. If you know your Sumerian mythology, you already see where this is going.
In Sumer, the god of wisdom is Enki. Enki is always depicted with the serpent, the one who brought forbidden knowledge to humanity, the one who defied the counsel of the gods and uplifted the human race against their will. In the Bible, this same figure becomes the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the one who offers the fruit of knowledge, the one who tells Eve, "You will not surely die. You will become like gods." In Hindu tradition, the Nagas are divine serpent beings, protectors of hidden wisdom, guardians of underground temples and secret lakes. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl is the feathered serpent who brought writing, agriculture, and astronomy to the Mayans and Aztecs. These aren't different stories, they're the same story, told by cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, all describing the arrival of the serpent, the bringer of knowledge, the enlightener of humanity. And according to the Naacal Tablets, they all came from the same place, Mu. The tablets describe how the Naacal weren't just priests wandering the earth spreading wisdom, they were ambassadors, representatives of something greater, sent out from the mother continent to establish colonies, to build temples, to preserve knowledge in stone before the coming catastrophe. Churchward claimed they traveled to Egypt and became the mystery school priests who taught the pharaohs. They traveled to Mesopotamia and became the Anunnaki pantheon. They traveled to Central America and became the gods of the Mayans and Aztecs. They traveled to India and became the Nagas, the serpent kings who ruled from beneath the earth. Everywhere they went, they taught the same things: astronomy, mathematics, architecture, agriculture. And they left behind the same symbols: the serpent, the spiral, the eye, the pyramid. But here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. Churchward didn't just say the Naacal were wise, he said they weren't entirely human. He described them as a black race, superior in many respects to our own, with knowledge of sciences we still don't fully understand. He said they lived longer, thought deeper, and had access to technologies that allowed them to manipulate matter, energy, and even time. But where did they come from? The Naacal Tablets gave an answer, and it wasn't from Earth. Let's talk about genetics for a second, because this is where the story goes from ancient history to forbidden science. In 2010, the Human Genome Project confirmed something shocking. Modern humans carry DNA from species that are not Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and potentially others we haven't identified yet. But here's what nobody asks. That unknown DNA isn't from a primitive cousin. It's from something else entirely. The Naacal Tablets don't describe evolution. They describe creation, deliberate creation. Picture this. 50,000 years ago, the continent of Mu stretches across the Pacific. 7 great cities dot its landscape, connected by stone roads and canal systems that would make Rome jealous. In the center, the capital, a city of white stone and gold, where the temples rise toward the sky like mountains. Inside the central temple, the star gods gather, beings who descended from the heavens generations ago. They stand before a council of Naacal priests, and they present their proposal. Humanity, as it exists, is too simple, too primitive, too limited. They propose an experiment, a modification. They will take the clay of the earth, the primitive hominids who wander the forests and plains, and they will mix it with their own essence, their own blood, their own genetic code. The result will be a hybrid species, one capable of language, of abstract thought, of building, of creating, of holding the knowledge of the gods.
The council debates. Some say it's too dangerous, that creating such a species will upset the balance, that humanity will become too powerful, too aware, too much like them. But others argued that this is the purpose, that this is why they came to Earth in the first place, to seed intelligence, to uplift consciousness, to create a vessel capable of carrying their knowledge into the future. The vote is cast, the decision is made, and the experiment begins.
This isn't mythology. It's recorded in stone. Not just in the Naacal Tablets, but in creation myths across the entire planet. In Sumer, the Anunnaki create humans to serve as workers. They mix the clay of the earth with the essence of the gods. The text is specific. They take the blood of a slain god, mix it with clay, and mold humanity. In the Bible, God creates Adam from dust and breathes life into him, the breath of God, the divine essence mixed with earthly matter. In Egypt, the god Khnum molds humanity on a potter's wheel, shaping them from the clay of the Nile. In Hindu scripture, Brahma creates the first beings through thought and sound, speaking them into existence. Every culture, every continent, the same story. Divine beings taking primitive matter and transforming it through their own essence. This is an allegory, this is a memory, a collective memory of the moment humanity was changed, the moment we became something more than animals. And if Mu was the first, if it existed 50,000 years before Sumer, then this wasn't mythology, this was history. Mu was the laboratory, the testing ground, the birthplace of the hybrid species, and we are the descendants of that experiment. Churchward claimed the tablets described a time when the star gods descended to Earth and established Mu as their base of operations. They built cities using technologies we still can't replicate. They educated a chosen bloodline, the Naacal, and gave them the responsibility of guiding the rest of humanity. For thousands of years it worked. Mu flourished. The 7 cities grew. The population expanded. Knowledge spread across the colonies. Egypt learned to build pyramids. Sumer learned to write. China learned astronomy. India learned mathematics. But something went wrong. The tablets describe a division, a split within the Naacal Brotherhood itself. Some wanted humanity to remain obedient, controlled, manageable. They believed the experiment had limits, and those limits needed to be enforced. Others wanted humanity to be free, to have access to all knowledge, to become equals with the gods themselves. This wasn't just a philosophical debate, it was a war between factions of the same brotherhood, a war that would determine the future of the entire planet. That's the exact same conflict described in the Book of Enoch. The Watchers descend to Earth. They teach humanity forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, weaponry, cosmetics, astrology. They interbreed with human women, creating the Nephilim, a race of giants, a hybrid species that was never supposed to exist. The other gods, the ones who did not participate, become furious. They see the corruption. They see humanity growing too powerful, too knowledgeable, too dangerous, and they demand a reset. The tablets describe what happened next, and it wasn't gradual. It wasn't erosion or climate change or slow geological drift. It was sudden, violent, catastrophic. 12,000 years ago, the continent of Mu began to shake. Earthquakes tore through the cities. Volcanoes that had been dormant for millennia erupted simultaneously. The ground itself split open, releasing rivers of molten rock. But this wasn't just tectonic activity. The tablets describe something else, something deliberate. They describe the opening of the gas belts beneath the Earth, massive pockets of trapped gas released all at once, causing the land to collapse inward. They describe the ocean rushing in, not in waves, but in walls of water hundreds of feet high.
In a single night, the 7 great cities of Mu were swallowed. 64 million people gone. The few who survived fled in ships. They carried what they could: seeds, tablets, sacred objects, tools, and they sailed east and west, desperately trying to reach land before the waves caught them. Some made it, most didn't. The ones who landed in the Americas became the ancestors of the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas. They rebuilt what they remembered. They carved their history into stone. They worshipped the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, the bringer of knowledge who came from across the sea. Others sailed west toward the Middle East. They landed in Mesopotamia, in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates. They settled, they rebuilt, they became the Sumerians. But they weren't starting from scratch. They were refugees, survivors of the greatest catastrophe in human history. And the knowledge they carried, the fragments they remembered, became the foundation of what we call civilization.
The flood wasn't a myth. It was a memory, a global memory of the night the world ended and began again. And the story they told, the story of the Ark, of the chosen ones who escaped, of the gods who sent the waters to cleanse the earth, wasn't allegory, it was testimony. But here's what nobody dares to ask. If the destruction of Mu was deliberate, someone gave the order, and the tablets named them. And could it happen again? Now here's where the story gets even darker. Mu was real. The Naga were real. The star gods were real, and they didn't just vanish. The tablets say they returned to the stars, that after the flood, after the destruction, after humanity had been reset, the gods departed. They left behind monuments, pyramids, megalithic structures, buried cities, hidden chambers filled with knowledge that we're only now beginning to rediscover. They didn't leave, they went underground, and the evidence has been surfacing ever since. In 1921, a man named William Niven was excavating in the Valley of Mexico when he discovered over 2,000 stone tablets buried deep beneath the surface. They were covered in the same script Churchward had described, the same Naga Maya language, the same symbols. Churchward was able to translate them, and according to him, they confirmed everything. They described Mu. They described the flood. They described the dispersion of the survivors. They even described the locations of other hidden tablets buried in chambers beneath the earth, waiting to be found. But here's the problem. Mainstream archaeology refused to acknowledge them. They called them forgeries. They said Niven fabricated them to support Churchward's theories. Except Niven discovered those tablets in 1921. Churchward didn't publish his first book until 1926. Niven couldn't have forged something to match a theory that hadn't been made public yet. Either they're both lying, independently inventing the same elaborate hoax, or they both stumbled onto something real, something that wasn't supposed to be found. The dates make the hoax theory impossible. And then there's the physical evidence, the structures that shouldn't exist. The Moai statues of Easter Island, massive stone figures weighing up to 82 tons, carved with tools that shouldn't have existed in 1250 AD. When the Rapa Nui people are asked about them, they say their ancestors built them to honor the gods. But when asked how they moved them across the island, miles from the quarry where they were carved, the answer is always the same. The statues walked. Not rolled, not dragged, walked. Modern engineers have tried to replicate the process. The only method that comes close is a rocking motion using ropes, a technique that requires an understanding of physics, leverage, and coordinated labor far beyond what a primitive island culture should have possessed. They weren't primitive, they were taught by someone who remembered. And then there are the pyramids, not just in Egypt, but in Mexico, in China, in Bosnia, in Indonesia, in Peru. Structures built thousands of years apart on different continents by cultures that supposedly never had contact.
Yet they all follow the same principles, the same astronomical alignments, the same geometric precision, the same mathematical ratios. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned to true north with an error of less than 1/15 of a degree, built with over 2 million stone blocks, some weighing over 70 tons, constructed with such precision that you can't fit a sheet of paper between the stones. The pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico, laid out in the exact same pattern as the pyramids of Giza, aligned to the same stars, built using the same unit of measurement, the megalithic yard, a measurement that shows up in structures from Stonehenge to the temples of Malta. The Shanxi pyramids in China, older than the Egyptian pyramids, covered with vegetation, mostly unexcavated, but visible from satellite imagery, revealing the same stepped design, the same orientation. Here's how. They were all built by descendants of the same source, the same knowledge, the same bloodline, the bloodline of Mu.
Mu was real. The tablets are real. The genetic evidence is real, and mainstream science knows it. So why the silence? Because the implications are too dangerous. If Mu existed, then human history didn't begin 5,000 years ago in Sumer. It began 50,000 years ago in the Pacific. And that means everything we've been taught about evolution, about the development of civilization, about the origin of language, agriculture, and technology is wrong. If the star gods were real, then humanity wasn't created through natural selection. We were designed, engineered, modified. We are not the apex of creation. We are a product, a tool, a hybrid species created for a purpose we may not fully understand. And if the flood was real, if it was sent deliberately to wipe out a civilization that had become too powerful, too knowledgeable, too dangerous, could it happen again? We're approaching the same threshold, the same line Mu crossed 12,000 years ago. The geological evidence is undeniable. 12,000 years ago, something catastrophic occurred. Sea levels rose dramatically, ice sheets melted, coastal civilizations would have been obliterated overnight. But there's no evidence of a sunken continent, they say. The Pacific Ocean floor has been mapped. Plate tectonics makes it impossible for a landmass that size to simply vanish. Except it doesn't. Not when you look at what's actually been found. In the 1990s, marine archaeologists discovered the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, a massive underwater structure with sharp edges, right angles, terraces, and carved steps. Mainstream geologists claim it's natural, just erosion, but the measurements tell a different story. The symmetry, the tool marks, the obvious modification of natural rock. In 2001, similar structures were found off the coast of India near Dwarka. Stone foundations, walls, pillars, artifacts dated to over 9,000 years old, an entire city submerged. In 2014, researchers discovered geometric formations beneath the sands of the Sahara using satellite imaging, patterns too perfect to be natural, structures buried under miles of sand. And in Antarctica, ground-penetrating radar has revealed anomalies beneath the ice, linear formations, right angles, networks, shapes that shouldn't exist in a natural landscape. Mu didn't sink entirely. Parts of it still remain, buried under ice, hidden beneath sand, drowned under oceans we've only just begun to explore. The story isn't over. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. The Sumerian tablets, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Mayan codices, the Vedic scriptures, they're not separate mythologies, they're fragments of the same story, pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, reveal a history too radical for academia to accept. Mu was the motherland, the first global empire, the birthplace of the Naacal, the Serpent Brotherhood,
the ones who spread across the world and became the gods of every ancient culture. When Mu sank, they didn't disappear. They scattered, they rebuilt. They became the Anunnaki in Sumer, the Neteru in Egypt, the Viracocha in Peru, the Nagas in India, the Elohim in Canaan. And the knowledge they carried, the tablets, the symbols, the rituals, the architecture, it wasn't lost, it was hidden, passed down through secret societies, mystery schools, and bloodlines that still exist today. Because if we are their creation, if our DNA carries their signature, then we are the living proof. We are the evidence that cannot be erased. The next time you hear about the Sumerian King List and the impossible reigns that lasted hundreds of thousands of years, remember this: they weren't myths, they were records. Records of kings who ruled not in Mesopotamia, but in Mu, the first empire, the mother civilization. And when you hear about the Anunnaki, about the gods who descended from the heavens and created humanity, remember this: they weren't aliens from a distant planet. They were survivors, refugees from a sunken continent, carrying the last remnants of a technology and the knowledge that once ruled the entire planet. The story of Mu is the story of us, the forgotten origin, the erased chapter, the truth that was buried beneath the waves and rewritten by those who came after. But the tablets remain, the monuments remain, the bloodlines remain. The survivors of Mu didn't vanish. They went underground into secret societies, mystery schools, and bloodlines that still exist today. Where did they go, and what did they build? That's the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,